Okay, let's make a start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm speaking to you from Colombo in Sri Lanka. My name is Mark Smith. I'm the Director General of the International Water Management Institute, and it's my pleasure, my honor, to have been invited to moderate this webinar today. I thank you all for participating in this webinar on water governance and financing in Asia Pacific. This event marks the launch of 2 policy papers that have been developed in follow-up to the publication by the ADB of the Asian Water Development Outlook Report in 2020. The AWDO 2020 report highlighted the progress achieved and challenges that must now be tackled to build water security across the Asia Pacific region. In the AWDO 2020 report, ADB and OECD presented key messages on the importance of finance and governance in building water security. And as we'll hear more about, they've built on and further elaborated their recommendations based on the results of a survey conducted across 48 countries in the region in the policy papers that are being launched today. So as we begin the webinar, I want to flag a few housekeeping matters. First, we're recording this webinar, and the recording will be made available on our webpage later next week. The webinar format, this webinar is being presented in Zoom webinar format. We have 226 people registered, and we invite all participants to use the Q&A function to share your thoughts and to address the panelists. You can also use the chat function to contact our support team if you have any technical difficulties that they can help you with. We want this webinar to be as interactive as possible. So we invite you to engage with us over the next hour by using the chat and by using the Q&A. The OECD technical team, as well as 2 experts who contributed to the reports that we're launching today, Maria Salvetti and Xavier Lefebvre, are available to reply to your questions as well. And feel free also to engage on Twitter. You can see the hashtag and the OECD handles on your screen now to do that with. We're very, very pleased and extremely thankful to have a distinguished panel of speakers with us today. And you can see those contributors to today's session on your screen now. I'll be introducing each of them in turn as we go through. But I would like to start the discussion with some opening remarks from Dr. Jingmin Huang, who is the Director for Urban Development, Water Supply and Sanitation Division of the Pacific Department of ADB. Dr. Huang, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Hello from Manila. On behalf of ADB, I'm delighted to join this webinar today. My topic is on how to achieve water security in Asia and Pacific. Next slide, please. Water security is a foundation of social resilience, driving inclusive growth and also people's well-being. In this COVID-19 pandemic, 3 billion people without access to water supply or hand washing facilities have been hit particularly hard. In order to assess how well a country is doing to achieve the water security toward the Sustainable Development Goal and target, namely this SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, ADB Water Sector Group has published the Asian Water Development Outlook we call AWDO. The AWDO is one of ADB's flagship publications, which uses 5 very straightforward key dimensions to evaluate national water security. You can see in the right side of this slide, the 5 dimensions include water-related disasters, rural households, environmental, urban, and economic. 4 editions of the AWDO have been published so far. It is a very good tool for comprehensive and continuous monitoring of national water security among ADB member countries. It also has raised the profile of water security in the region's public policy agenda, contributed to a policy relevant definition of water security, and inspired many local and national water reforms. The first three additions are here, as I listed on the left-hand side of the slides. And the latest one is AWDO 2020. So you may wonder, what's the difference in the latest AWDO? Next slide, please. AWDO 2020 was launched jointly in last December by all the contributing partners listed at the bottom in this slide. You can download it for free from ADB web link provided in the right side of this slide. On one hand, it is a very good communication tool on water security. On the other hand, it's a very powerful policy tool that can inform and guide policy reforms and investment decisions for water security across the region. One of the most innovative and important features of AWDO 2020 is the incorporation of dedicated governance and financing sections based on OECD's methodologies and analysis. It is the result of a long-standing knowledge collaboration between ADB and OECD. You can see the long journey in the left side of this slide, which started back in August 2019. The two institutions conducted regular meetings and held the showcase together during Stockholm World Water Week. After the successful joint launching of AWDO 2020, we are so excited to see that OECD has developed further the policy papers of water governance and financing, and we are launched today. This is really a very fruitful collaboration. Next slide, please. Let's see what results AWDO 2020 has provided. This slide shows the National Water Security Index of ADB members. The higher the rating, the better its national water security is. Of 49 economics assessed of AWDO 2020, only Afghanistan is in the nascent stage of national water security. Advanced economies like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Korea receives high scores of 4. Yet no economy is in the model stage. Most of the economies assessed are in engaged stage or capable stages of water security. Behind this general index, there is also a very detailed rating for each dimension. If you compare this index historically, it really gives you a very good metric to measure progress toward the water security. It also covers the Pacific Island countries indicated in the star area in the right side of the slides. Our region is very small. This is where my division is working on. It's usually very difficult to find water sector background information for such small countries. The application of AWDO over time really helps us to define and also fine-tune our water-related interventions in Pacific countries and pivot them to address emerging issues such as climate change and healthy oceans. AWDO 2020 also includes country case studies, Thailand, Karnataka in India, People's Republic of China, and Timor-Leste, some of which would also be presented today in this seminar. Next slide, please. Again, water security is a major challenge for Asia-Pacific region and extremely important for a country's overall security. In this pandemic time, water security really requires robust public policies targeting measurable objectives across all the 5 dimensions. Sound financing mechanisms for water security are, of course, also very, very essential. OECD's policy papers will certainly help our member country governments to further explore the areas of governance and financing and identify concrete priority actions, which are also very important for building back better in a post-pandemic time. We look forward to the launching of the policy papers and also continuing successful collaboration with OECD. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Huang. I'd like to turn now to Lamia Kamal Shawi, who is Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities from the OECD. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mark. Dear Director Jingming Huang, distinguished panelists, dear Rodolfo, my colleague at the OECD, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really delighted to join you today to launch 2 new OECD policy papers on water governance and financing in the Asia-Pacific region. This paper are the result of a 2-year collaboration between the Asian Development Bank and the OECD, specifically the OECD Environment Directorate headed by my colleague Rodolfo Lacey, who is going to provide the concluding remarks, and the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities that I lead. So on behalf of Rodolfo and myself, again, I would like to thank Mrs. Wang warmly for this really wonderful opportunity to join forces on a really critical issue. We were pleased to have some of the findings of this 2 new OECD policy paper published in the Asia Water Development Outlook 2020. As you mentioned, Mrs. Wang, water security is really a pressing issue in the Asia-Pacific region, and it is the case in many parts of the world, but maybe the scale of the challenges, someone from Europe, you know, we are stuck about the numbers and about the challenges which are particularly worrisome in the region. First, because 1.7 billion people still lack access to basic sanitation. Second, because 2.3 billion people were affected by floods over the past 2 decades, and we can expect 30 million more by 2030. And third, because 1.1 billion people are already affected by drought, and 3.4 billion could live in water-stressed areas by 2050 due to climate change. So these figures are huge. They are literally staggering. And now with COVID, COVID is bringing additional challenges. The pandemic has indeed act like a magnifying glass on the scale of the water security issue in the region, where actually 40% of households do not have access to water at home. This is an issue when you really need to wash your hands as one of the most important things that you have to do to prevent against COVID. The pandemic has heavily affected the economy of the region, with some countries like Malaysia and the Philippines recording unprecedented GDP contraction. So in this context, the much needed investment in water security will be hampered by the crisis, while vulnerability and exposure to water risk will in turn impact on economic growth. So we know that already that most countries will need to allocate between 1% and 2% of GDP on water supply and sanitation infrastructure by 2030. And we know that irrigation investment needs could go up to 0.25% of annual GDP by 2030. And this challenge, they are likely to exacerbate over time because of increasing water demand and increasing risk of drought and floods. So our new policy papers look at both the financing and governance dimension of this issue. There we analyze capital investment needs, operation and maintenance costs for water services. We look at issues like flood protection and irrigation infrastructure, and we identify several challenges in how the sector is operated and financed, which may differ from one country to another. The question of affordability, for instance, we've seen that in Indonesia and Vietnam, annual tariffs in some of their cities can amount to more than 10% of the annual income of the middle quintile households, whereas in Kazakhstan and Malaysia, there is much leeway to increase water tariffs. our policy papers points to several policy options that countries in the region could explore and combine. They include, for instance, making a better use of existing assets, considering, for instance, opportunities to agglomerate utilities at the right scale, investing in projects that enhance water securities, such as a land value capture mechanism for property developers to finance water security investment, and eventually raising more funds by leveraging public and available development finance to crowd in private funds. But as we always stress at the OECD, addressing water challenges are not just about financing. Governance matters as well. And here, our papers call for mechanisms that ensure regulation is in place, stakeholders are properly engaged in policy making and implementation, data is properly collected and analyzed to tackle water risk, capacities are developed to improve the efficiency of water services, and local solutions are provided for integrated water resources management. Now, the good news is that there have been much improvement toward greater water governance in Asia Pacific, as evidenced by a survey we carry out across 48 countries in the regions. And there we found that all these countries, they do have a water policy framework in place, which commonly refer to the human right to water and sanitation. We found also that a large majority of countries have dedicated water policies, and we found that 80% of them set up river basin organization to manage water at the right scale. But and this really showed that the tremendous progress made over the last decades. But despite this progress, there are still a lot of areas for improvement. First, the question of implementation. The implementation of water policy is really lagging behind. And as an example, only 21% of countries surveyed actually monitor groundwater extractions. Second, a vast majority of countries are missing reliable water-related data. So without it, how can countries guide their actions and policies? And third, while nearly all countries surveyed, they have a regulatory body dedicated to water services, much more needs to be done to clarify their mandate. So based on the OECD long-standing water program, and particularly as part of our water governance initiative and our roundtable on financing water, our two new papers offer a numbers of policy recommendations, and I'm going now just to flag 4 of them. First, we recommend to enhance transparency and integrity in the sector to increase public trust and engagement. This is really important in a region when only a third of the countries we surveyed engage stakeholders on water-related topics. Second, we recommend to better coordinate across policy areas, and in particular between water and urban development, but also with land use, forestry, agriculture expansion, and modernization, which is true everywhere, but this is a particular challenge in many countries in the Asia Pacific. Third, we recommend building the technical and financial capacities needed to collect and analyze data on the water sector. And last but not least, we recommend strengthening institutions and policies so that they can support investment in water security and sustainable growth. And here there is a room to really approve the allocation of the ODA, the official development assistance, across countries of the region, and to use this and to use public funds and ODA's flows more strategically to crowd in domestic private finance. So again, let me congratulate the ADB on their latest Asia Water Development Outlook, which really provides the evidence needed now to drive policy action in the region. At the OECD, we are really proud to have contributed to this flagship publication. I would like on my side to thank the lead author in the OECD of these 2 papers, Xavier Lefebvre and Maria Salvetti from the OECD Secretariat. Ladies and gentlemen, from many Asian Pacific countries, there is still a long way to go toward better water security. And at the OECD, we really stand ready to continue working with the IDB, the International Water Management Institute, and with all the partner countries, really to support them in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Lamia. Thank you so much. And thank you for laying out the extent of the challenge that is faced in this region, and indeed summarizing the recommendations that are available in the two reports. So for our audience on the screen, you can take a picture of the QR code and access the reports online. Or indeed, I think there should be a link to click on that's provided in the chat to follow up so you can obtain those reports. So we've heard opening remarks, we've heard about a summary of the Asian Water Development Outlook Report of 2020. We've heard about the two policy papers that are being launched today. And before we will move on next to a set of presentations about experiences from different countries in the region, we'd like to take a few minutes to have some participation from all of you, from all of the audience, with a poll that we'll do online. With the Zoom tools. So the question is that we'd like you to answer, and we want you to pick one of these choices. The question is, what are the main obstacles you feel in your country that inhibit water security? So please go ahead and pick one that you feel is the most important, and then we'll have a look at the results. After a few seconds, we'll see some results, and then we can take a look at those together. And while you're doing that, maybe I'll just take this time also to remind people that if you have questions that you want to put to the panelists, either those you've heard from already or those that we'll hear from soon, or indeed the two lead authors of the two policy papers, please put those in the Q&A. Our panelists and experts will be able to answer those online, but also there should be a few moments toward the end in which we can take a couple of those questions and have a discussion about them with the panel. So here we have the results from all of you. Thank you for putting in your votes. The top choice, the top main obstacle that people feel inhibits water security is lack of coordination across policies, followed by institutional fragmentation, and then in third place would be weak planning across sectors. So I think that voting is consistent with all of our experience of the issues we face in tackling water security. So thank you for taking part in that. Thank you for relaying your opinion there. So we should move on now. And as I said, in the next stage of the webinar, we're going to hear from 3 different country experiences, and the first will be from Indonesia. So I'm going to hand on now to Mr. Pak Abdul Malik Sadat Idris, who is the Deputy Director for Institutional Infrastructure of Water Resources at the Indonesian National Development Planning Agency. Dr. Malik, over to you.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Mark, and thanks to the OECD and ADB to organize this meeting. I'd like to share my country experience. Next. Especially how, our trajectory, and I'm quite happy that ADB thinks Indonesia is already in the capable category. This is quite complex situation in our country, actually. This is the example of the battleground. What is North Java, that has high industrial growth there, and trigger high demand for water, and most of our water supply, access comes from the groundwater, and also that area is prone also for land subsidence due to some of the groundwater abstraction, and then in fact this area also half of our irrigation schemes is in North Java, so it's really quite complex situation with 150 million people live there, and to improve the city scale of sanitation. Actually, government pursue some acceleration policy for the next 5 years. For instance, we improve our water safety plan, how to implement source-to-tap policy, and then we trying also to improve our irrigation more efficiency and participatory approach. And then we also try to improve our data and ICT by implement smart water management. And for instance, for disaster, we little bit moving to strengthen our flood management approach or non-structural approach, such as developing regional policies for disaster resilience, building some integrated early warning and disaster emergency response. At the end, we also try to promote our conservation, the green infrastructure approach, since actually this is the fundamental of our water security. Next. Next slide, please. It will be, I answer the first question about institutional fragmentation. For instance, like in Java case, we have the captive market for industrial water demand. But actually, when we want to implement, there is 3 tier of system. From the inside the Ministry of Public Works, there are 2 Directorate General, the Directorate General of Water Resource and Directorate General of Human Settlement. And later on, the regional government through the regional owned enterprise. The 2 latest example of the private participation, PPP's project, combining with the government project, the Karyan project and the Umbulan, it takes more than 10 years to implement due to, I will explain later, but most of them because of institutional and also how to finance the project in bundling or in competitive manners, and also the rules engagement for the investor or the private sector to join this water sector not yet well established. Next slide, please. In our effort to accelerate the target, the COVID-19 actually affect the priorities, especially for the fiscal capacity of the regional government and also central government. In 2020, we are forced to reduce our target by 30%. For instance, usually we plan to have quite 11.4 meter cubic per second of the raw water supply and the 1.5 million household connection. We forced to reduce and realign our project allocation through the budget condition. And next slide, please. So how we improve actually in terms of the governance? We just have from the parliament, the new law of water resources from number 17 2019, and the government regulation need to be issued in at least in this year, I think 2021. We try to improve our water governance and financing. The policy is like we need to give strengthen about the water management leading sector. And then in terms of EWRM, we integrate more integrate pola, rencana, and project, including conservation, conjunctive use, damage, based on the river basin management. And we try to improve our government regulation of water supply, especially to synchronize between water policy and master plan of the water supply system, and how to enhance the state-owned enterprise and regional-owned enterprise capability. Since in our water law, most of the tasks will be given to this state-owned enterprise. Regarding financing, now we are formulating the effective water resource conservation financing. We have not yet implement the fully. We have the regulation actually about the polluters pay, about the water use. The operational maintenance fund, but not yet implement in the full scale. The second aspect we try to improve actually how our investment package for infrastructure become international bankable, especially to improve our PPP scheme, availability payment for non-tariff investment, return, like for water unit, water distribution, and O&M, and give direct loan to state-owned companies and regional-owned enterprise, and how we can create the bundling investment package to bundling concession scheme from PDAMs, the regional water company, distribution house, and connection investment, and non-revenue water incentive. The final scheme financing we try to formulate right now is how to improve the water tariff mechanism, a review of the government regulation number 17, 2016. And actually, we are also to improve water tariff subsidy for the selected PDAM. Since we, in transportation sector, we already implement several subsidy, and most of our, especially for the bottom 40 of our population, we need to improve our cost recovery by also change the subsidy mechanism. Okay, I think that's conclude my presentation. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that experience of the way you're working in Indonesia with water governance and linking that to the financing arrangements. Next, we would move on to a case study from Thailand. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Piatida Ruangrasamy, who is assistant professor in the Department of Water Resources Engineering at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. Dr. Ruangrasamy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mark. And hello to all from Bangkok, Thailand. So I'm working at a university in Thailand, Chulalongkorn University, and have a great opportunity to work with the organization in Thailand and AWDO in the development of the AWDO 2020 as a case study of Thailand. And first of all, I would like to congratulate OECD and AWDO on the two novelty reports on the water governance and financing. These two reports are really important for the way forwards for improving water security in Asia Pacific region. Next slide, please. So for Thailand, recently we have developed master plan for the water resources management in synchronization for different level of the management. And we have adapting the AWDO framework, the Asian Water Development Outlook framework to assess and monitor the water security of Thailand. So at the first level, we have the national strategies with the one focus is on the green development. And on the second level is a master plan that we have one issue that focusing on water system management with the goal to improve our national water security and to enhance our water productivity in agriculture, in industry and service sector. And the third goal is to recover our national water resources. And at the third level, at the implementation of the policy, we have the water resources management master plan that focusing on the water for domestic, water for production, flood management, water quality, upstream conservation, and the water management. So at the second level, we have the Office of the National Economic and Social Development Council to oversee all the issues under the master plan. And for the master plan on water resources management at the third level, we have recently new organization, the Office of the National Water Resources, ONWR. So in Thailand, we have more than 40 agencies that are related to water resource management, both surface and groundwater. So the new office, the ONWR, will regulate and develop the policy and also taking care of the budget allocation for the integrated water resources management. Next, please. So as I mentioned, this is our recent institutional development. Starting in 2015 that we formed the National Water Resources Committee. And then in October 2017, we have the new office called the Office of the National Water Resources. So this is a very big step for us that we now have one organization that will look at the overall planning and management of our water resources. And after that, in 2018, we have our first water resources law in place. Next slide, please. So for the change in the water governance, so now that we have the water master plan by ONWR, next please. Then we have the administration at provincial level, and we also have the River Basin Committee that we work together. Next, please. So going down to the district and sub-district level, to the community level. So we have a flow of the work plan that they can work together. And now ONWR starting to have the water use organization coming from the sub-district level so that they can form a group of water users, either in agricultural sector or non-agricultural sector, and they will work together based on the data, the local data that they gather, and build up the capacity of the people in the community as a water user to understand their area better and to understand how they can use the water more efficiently. So in terms of the OECD governance framework, so we see quite a lot of improvement. Next, please. Yes, next, please. So for the effectiveness, we see more policy coherence, clearer roles and responsibilities. For efficiency. We have the better data and information system and regulatory framework. For trust and engagement, we're starting the program on the monitoring and evaluation of the project that received the budget and using the AWDO framework to monitor them. And we also work very hard to have stakeholder engagement, but we still have the areas that we still need improvement. For example, the capacity building and the appropriate skill within the basin system. Next, please. And also in terms of financing, we are the ONWR and the related agency are working very hard on the innovative financing mechanism in Thailand. So I just would like to show the allocation of the budget for the integrated water resources management in the fiscal year of 2020. So it covers a pretty wide range of agency, 18 agencies in 9 ministries. And we have the main investment in the water for production and for the flood management that hugely affect the economy of Thailand. And for the annual investment cost in water infrastructure, in water supply and sanitation is about 5.74 USD billions dollar, and the riverine flood protection is 26.94 USD billions. And we are looking forward to moving into the non-structural measures and the risk management. So this is what we would like to share with you today. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruangrasamy. Indeed, you've highlighted a number of the issues that we saw come up in the poll that people thought were priorities in the poll. So that's connected together very nicely. Let's move on here from Korea and the Asia Pacific at regional level. So it's my pleasure now to welcome Dr. Yongdeok Cho, who is Executive Director of the Asia Water Council and General Manager of the Global Cooperation Department of K-Water in Korea. Dr. Cho, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Smith, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm so honored to have a chance to deliver the water security issue in Korea and Asia. And before I present this thing, I really appreciate the OECD and AWDO to publish AWDO. I think it's going to be very useful to cooperate with the Asian country and accomplish the SDGs. Next, please. I think this is the last page. Okay, one page before. I think this is the last page. Could you turn on the second page? Okay, I'm going to present two topics. The first one is water security issues in Korea, and the second one is representative cases of water security in Asia. Can you open the PowerPoint? Okay, I'm just present without the PPT file. And first of all, I want to explain the water security issues in the past. In 2020, in case of Korea, we have a unification of organization, water environment, and okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you. All right. So, the water security issues in the past, and we have pluralized the government situation we had, kind of the water supply, dam, and the sewage, and the river and groundwater. Each organization has has the same function in the same the quality, same quantity of the work. That was really the great issue in Korea. Because of that reason, we have a kind of a lack of a systematic water management. First one is, as I mentioned, pluralize the water authority, and the second one is a regional imbalance. In terms of our regional water service disparity we had, and the urban-rural water conflict we had, and also as well as we had a water tariff different, and also we have a low quality of river water because different of the other organization that operated upstream and the downstream area, because of that reason it's not easy to operate continuously. And also, when you look at the kind of financial inefficiency, we had a 3.7 trillion the Korea won, around 3.2 billion US dollar budget waste from the overlapping, and the 4 trillion the Korean won, around 3.5 billion US dollar the investment overlapping due to the dualized water supply system for region and the local area. Next page, please. Next page, please. Thank you. Okay, because of that reason, 2020, we unified the water management. So the kind of environmental, the Minister of Environment and the Minister of the MOLID, combined together, and the water resources, the water quality and the water quantity combined together. Therefore, can I back? All right. Therefore, we had a the object, from segmentation to integration, and from development to management, and from center to region, and from domestic to the world. That is the objective of the unified water management. Next page, please. Okay. So I'm going to explain the representative case of water security in Asia. So as you can see, Asia had a lot of the water issue, when you look at as AWDO published, there are a lot of vulnerable area we had in Asia. And the Asia Water Council established in 2016. We focused on the technical strengths. The OECD focused on the finance and policy expertise. And combined together, if we combine technological and finance and the policy, we can make the good outcome. Next page, please. Therefore, we initiated the joint project between the OECD, AWDO, and MOE, Republic of Korea. We had a three-stage. First stage is looking for the diagnosis and direction, and the second, the implementation, the roadmap, and the third, strategic option and plan. The targeted area around the 9 countries. We started Thailand last year. That this year is going to be start in Indonesia. Secondly, and there are two big pillars. The first one is the national policy dialogue, and the second one, the regional level. Specifically in the national policy dialogue, we will have demand-driven dialogue and the policy and investment and technical approach. And the second one is to have an annual regional meeting. The Asia, the Asia countries come together. We're going to share our research, and we'll get the comment from the Asian countryside. Next page, please. All right, as I mentioned, the scope of work and outcome, we will do the national water security diagnosis and direction, and vulnerable assessment and evaluation of security measures. Based upon that one, we will accurate the solution to water problem, and finally, we're going to make some new national water security measures. Based upon this result, as I mentioned, the AWDO focus on the water project will link to the AWDO water project, and also we really want to work with the ADB and the OECD to solve the Asian water problem to accomplish the sustainable development goal, as well as the AWDO will work a global water welfare report, and that's going to be around 9 or 10 countries. So doing that thing will get a lot of advice and comment from the ADB and OECD. This is what I want to present to you, and I think AWDO also all agency that will work and cooperate together to solve Asian water problem and accomplish the sustainable development goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cho, and relating that experience in Korea and in the wider region. We have not so much time now to take up some questions. There are quite a few questions in the Q&A, but perhaps I can highlight just one. And first, I'll invite either Maria or Xavier to comment on this. And I know you're both writing your comments into the Q&A, but perhaps to share more directly with participants. And the one I'd like to pick is the one on the links between water and energy, water security and energy security. So the question is, a number of countries in the region are continuing to build coal power which is more water intensive than renewables. Do you think that the continued expansion of coal power undermines water security? And how do we address those kinds of issues between governance and finance? Maybe just start if Maria or Xavier are able to step in on that. Xavier?
Thank you, Mark. And I think it's a very valid question, especially in Asia. It's true that water issues cannot be addressed in isolation. They usually have to be addressed in combination with issues related to energy security, food security, and the like. That's why, and Mark, you know that very well, you've been working on that. We, in the water community, we focus very much on what we call the water, food, energy nexus, where you actually, and you can add the environment into the equation, where you can actually address these issues in a combined way. It's true that building more power plants will require additional water. One way to address the different tensions between alternative water users is to design water allocation regimes that can actually, set rules and principles on who should get water first. I mean, set priorities that can drive water allocation in normal times, but also in times of crisis. The OECD has done quite some work on water allocation regimes, which are a very, very important policy instrument to address tensions between water users. We'd love to do more work with selected partners in Asia on the country. We know reforming water allocation regimes can be very tricky. These are politically difficult reforms. We have some experience accompanying that transition to more, appropriate, more robust water allocation regime. It's a conversation I'd be happy to continue with the participants separately, not to take too much time of this forum.
Great, thank you, Xavier. Thank you. A very interesting and good answer to that, to what is a really thought-provoking question. There are a number of questions in the Q&A box, and I invite all of my colleagues on the panel to continue answering those in writing. But now, in the interest of time, we do need to move on to some final closing remarks on the way forward from Rodolfo Lassi, who is Director for the Environment Directorate at OECD. Rodolfo, please.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good evening and good morning to all of you. First, I would like to join in the thanks that my colleague Lamia Kamal Chawi to Madame Hang from the Asian Development Bank for a most valuable partnership over the last few years. It was the first time the Asia Water Development Outlook had dedicated chapters on finance and governance, and the OECD is really proud to have been associated with this innovation. We are sure that this collaboration paves the way for further partnerships to advance and achieve ambitious water agenda in Asia and the Pacific. We really appreciate the time and candid discussions with delegates from Indonesia and Thailand and the Asia Water Council. Today, of course, we are grateful to Korea and the Asia Water Council for further opportunities to support water agenda and policy reforms in selected countries in 2021 and in the coming years. With the new OECD Secretary General taking office in June 2021, coming from Australia, Mr. Matthias Coleman, we trust we will have the opportunity and the political support to engage even more on water-related issues in the region. At the OECD, we know that water is a strategic, cross-cutting issue and a driver for sustainable and inclusive growth. The current context marked by the concomitance of the global pandemic and a changing climate further confirms that water management is a condition for resilient communities and economies. The toolkit on water policies and governance that the OECD Secretary General Angel Gurria launched during the World Water Day last Monday crystallizes country-specific evidence and policy guidance which can expedite action and coverage towards international good practices for water management. governments will find a myriad of tools and options that can really help them deliver on their water agenda. I hope that the value added by OECD policy guidance can encourage non-member countries to adhere to the recommendation on water that we have. Our ambition is not to impose a one-way best way, but to share lessons learned from a range of practitioners which can benefit a wider community. These lessons are even more valuable in the context marked by the pandemic and its dire social and economic consequences. Our population are demanding that. Today and in the coming years, we need to make the best of our capabilities, our capacities for collective action, to design and implement the policies, governance arrangements, the one that we saw today, very useful and very interesting presentations, and for financing mechanisms that deliver tangible benefits for our communities in terms of water security, adaptation to climate change, and resilience to concomitant crises. This should be the ambition of the water community. And I am part also of the water community for many years. Please consider the OECD as the best supporting actor to help you deliver on that agenda. With this, I invite you to give a round of virtual applause to the speakers and splendid panelists, and to close this session. We look forward to further opportunities to engage with you and your partners in Asia and the Pacific. Have a nice evening if you are in Asia, and a nice day if you are like us in Europe. Stay safe.
Great. Thank you so much, Rodolfo. So to close the webinar, I'd just like to thank again the speakers, all of the speakers for joining us in this session, and for launching the new OECD reports, and for those authors and contributors for your efforts in bringing those reports to us as part of the 2020 edition of the Asia Water Development Outlook, which I would just say, personally, I find a fantastic report. So I highly recommend that people dive into that. Thank you to the audience for your contributions to the discussion through the chat box and the Q&A. And thank you also to the OECD team and the technical team for your support in pulling all of this together and making it happen. As we mentioned at the beginning, this webinar has been recorded, and so it will be available on the OECD website from next week. And finally, we invite you to register for the last webinar in the OECD Water Days series, which is upcoming, if I do the time change correct, in just an hour's time. In Sri Lanka, we have a funny half-hour time zone, so it's always hard to translate, but it's coming up very soon at 11 o'clock European time this morning on water governance for peace. And finally, an invitation to keep the conversation going through the social media channels. The handle is OECD Local, and the hashtag is OECD Water Days. So with that, we'll close, and I thank everyone for your participation today. Have a good day, good evening.